you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre, McGuire, and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. Brought to you by TCS Customs and Logistics. Moving pieces, delivering peace of mind. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to another edition of the Eye Test here on the Sick Podcast Network. He is Pierre McGuire. I am Jimmy Murphy, and we've got a great guest coming on shortly here on the Eye Test. The one and only Scotty Bowman will be joining us to tee up the conference finals. We got the Rangers and the Panthers and the Oilers and the Stars. The Oilers advanced last night, Pierre, with a 3-2 win over the Vancouver Canucks in Vancouver in Game 7. Your thoughts on that final game of the second round?
Vancouver ran out of gas. The long series with Nashville hurt them. The injury situation at Thatcher Demko set them back a little bit, even though I thought Sheloff's went in and played unbelievably well for them. Deserves a lot of credit in goal. He's not Thatcher Demko. And then the bad news on Brock Besser, with the blood clotting. That couldn't have been easy for anybody in the Vancouver room to digest. And you could see it. At one point there in the second period, they were being outshot 23-4.
Yeah.
And they're down 2-0. They just didn't have a lot of pushback. To their credit, in the third period with less than 10 minutes to go, they started to push, and Edmonton started falling into that trap that a lot of teams fall into that aren't used to winning a lot, and that is we're going to play a prevent defense. And like the great Bill Parcells said all the time, prevent defense does one thing: it prevents you from winning. But anyways, they made it tight down the end, which was great for Vancouver and their fans. And what a reception at the end of the game from the fans in Vancouver. Hats off to them. It's a proud hockey community, really building team, which is exciting for Patrick Alleyne, for obviously Jimmy Rutherford, and for Rick Tocchet and his staff.
Yep. And you know what? A great job, obviously, by Tocchet, like you said. And he nailed it. They have an identity back there. They have pride back in their organization after a rough period. They have direction right now, Pierre, and clearly the future is bright. Obviously, they didn't achieve their ultimate goal, but they're one of so many teams right now that haven't done that. So, but there's a clear direction there. I think they can identify certain areas they have to fill in that roster. But Rick Tocchet did a heck of a job, and there's a pretty good chance that he will get recognized for that with the Jack Adams Award. We will see who wins that in a couple. I think actually might be the end of next week. They're going to announce that. So we will find out on that. Pierre, quickly before we are joined by Scotty, you alerted me to something I had not watched, but I have gone and watched it. And we're going to talk about it in a bit. I don't know if we have the clip ready yet, but we'll start talking about it now. And it's something maybe we should, bring up with Scotty as well. Brad Treliving, Rick Tocchet, Brendan Shanahan, they all met the media today up in Toronto, introduced Craig Berube as the next head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the first thing that Treliving said as he was introducing Berube was, I brought him in because we need character. And character is the priority right now. So your instant reaction just to that comment right out of the gate there from Treliving as he introduced Berube.
I wouldn't want to be an analytics analyst in the Department of Hockey Operations, because whatever their budget is, it's probably going to get shrunk.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that there's some players, too, that I think may be looking in the mirror right now saying, I got to change some things or I'm going to be out of here in a hurry.
Well, I'm going to say this. I don't think Craig's going to have all the power on player personnel.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he'll describe for Brad Treliving what has worked for him, and then they'll try to accommodate him. I think people know they need more jam on the wings.
Uh-huh.
I think people think they know they need more stopping power on the back end. There's one player there, though, that I think Craig Berube will like a lot, Simon Benoit.
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll like him a lot. He'll remind him a lot of Robert Bortuzzo, when they were winning the cup in St. Louis. One guy plays on the right side, Bortuzzo, the other guy plays on the left side in Benoit. But I think he'll like him. And so they have some of those pieces. But the one thing that will be really apparent for people that follow the Leafs practice-wise and everything else, it's going to be straight lines. There's not going to be any zigzagging.
Oh, yeah.
You better be first to the puck.
Yep.
You better be hard on the boards, and you better be able to clear the slot. So it's a little bit of the Daryl Sutter thing. Daryl Sutter had some simple rules. Mm-hmm. You had to win board battles, You had to win slot area battles, and you had to win battles at the blue lines. That's all he cared about.
Yep.
The rest of it took care of itself. But if you didn't win those battles in those 3 areas, you weren't going to play for him.
All right. I hear you. Well, let's go to that quote right now from Trey Living. This was him right before he introduced Berube.
Ultimately, character matters. Character matters. It matters with your team, and it matters most importantly with your head coach. I look at Craig, and ultimately what brought me back to him was his leadership, his ability to build teams and have a team-first concept, his ability to connect with players, and his ability to hold people accountable. So it gives me great pleasure and an honor to introduce the next head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Craig Berube.
So there you go. There you go.
He's nice introduction.
He wants the players. He's a coach. So
you know what? I really like the way Brad handled that. That's a really good introduction. It's very appropriate because that's short, sweet, and to the point, and that's how Craig Berube coaches. That's how he speaks. He's direct. Remember I said straight line, Jimmy?
Yep.
It's straight lines.
No more BS. No more BS. Gonna get right to it. Pierre, I remember talking to our good friend Greg Cronin, who we've had on the eye test here, the head coach of the Anaheim Ducks, after he took the job last year. And what he did, I don't know if every coach does this. Everyone has their own methods, but I thought it was great that he did do it. He drove around North America. He didn't go over to Europe, but he did that by calls. But he drove around North America to the homes of each player that lives here in North America that he was going to start coaching in a couple months after that, to get to know them, whether it was lunch, whether it was dinner, or just a coffee, what have you, to look them in the eye and get a feel for them. When you were a coach, was that common practice when someone got hired that they would seek out the players to have individual one-on-ones to get a real good vibe before everybody, came back to town for training camp?
Yeah, it wasn't as pronounced as it is now. Obviously you didn't have the ability to make Zoom calls back then.
Right. Yep.
You didn't have cell phones. It was just different. People spread out a lot more back in the day. It was harder to get to Europe, and a lot of teams were just starting to cultivate European players then. So it was different. But no, I remember Badger Bob Johnson doing a lot of that. I remember Scotty when he went to Detroit doing a lot of that. Most of it was by phone. It wasn't as much as in person as what they do now. But it's an important part of it. I don't think Berube will drive around like Cronin did. But I do think he'll if he's already made contact with Johnny Tavares, and he's probably already been in touch with Austin Matthews. I bet he's talked to Mitchell Martin. I wouldn't be surprised if he talked to most of the guys.
Good.
Wouldn't surprise me if he has.
Yeah. And so he'll do that, right, and kind of get his own feel for each player and whether they fit into everything they describe that they want in their players, in their team, on the ice, what have you. And you would think, I guess, report back to Trey Living before the draft and free agency, just so maybe Trey Living, if he doesn't already, has a vibe of like, okay, this is where we want to go with players we target, whether it's via a trade or whether it's free agency. I would imagine those conversations are going to happen in the next few weeks, huh?
Yeah, I would say what more or what type of player do we need to formulate the identity you want to create as a coach?
Okay.
So he'll probably say, we need more size in the wings, or we need more physicality in our 3 and 4 hole, or we need, more shot blocking presence, or we need guys that are better initial puck movers. Whatever it is, I don't know what Craig's going to tell him. And he will have coached against him. He'll have digested tape. Everybody has their own opinion on what Toronto needs to do better. And clearly there's a lot they have to do better. They've won 1 round since Brendan Shanahan's been there in 10 years.
Yep.
So there's a lot they have to do. I mean, they're not a lead pipe cinch to be a superstar team, even though they got a lot of superstars. So it's going to be. I think this will be an interesting science experiment. I do, but I do think Berube, if the roster stays the same, this was a wasted exercise.
Yep, I agree.
Hiring Craig Berube, but if the roster changes, then it wasn't a wasted exercise.
Yep, I'm with you on that. And I think an interesting player to look at. You mentioned he already reached out to Tavares. What his situation is going forward with this franchise right now, with this team. I don't know if I'm not saying he's going to be moved, but just he's the captain, right? And so he's got a vibe on the core guys there as a player. He's got the player's point of view there. those must be some interesting conversations, I would think, that him and Berube are having.
Well, here's one thing. I don't think John Tavares gets treated very well in Toronto. And I think part of that is because people look at the number on the paycheck rather than what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to throw this at you, Jimmy. Forget how much he makes. Put him on the Boston Bruins team.
In a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
He might be their number one center.
Yeah, he could be. Partly constituted. If you added him to that team, he is their number one center.
Okay, so my point is there are a lot of teams. This is where I blame the coaches a little bit, the previous coaches. And it's not an indictment on because it's one player, but it's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Managing expectations on certain players matters.
Yes.
And sometimes the coach has to deflect away, especially in a hot hockey market like Toronto is, from a player that maybe is being put in a role that's not going to be conducive to putting points on the board.
Yep.
And nobody knows how to do that better than William Scott Bowman.
And he is joining us right now here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Scotty, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay. I got to get straightened out here, but can you see me?
Yeah, you look great. Different background, too. You're in a different room now.
I'm back home in Buffalo.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Jimmy, we got to go downstairs and see his collection.
No problem. No.
Got a hockey mecca down there or what?
Some of it.
Yeah.
Some of it, yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Scotty, so we are on to the conference finals. I guess, if you can briefly, just your thoughts so far in the playoffs, surprises, expectations maybe that you weren't met, teams maybe that you thought would do better, just an sort of an instant reaction.
Well, like most playoffs, Jim, the goaltending has been a pretty big factor, I think, when I look at the teams. I mean, maybe with the exception of Edmonton, but, don't forget Vancouver, people look at their team and wonder, they look at the game last night, but no reflection on the goaltender who's played in the minors all year long. But it just shows to me how important Thatcher Demko was to this team all season long. And it must have been quite a setback that how much did he miss at the end? About a month or something, maybe a month at the end?
I think so, yeah, right.
And
he came back for a little, and then he went back out.
I don't know what his injury was, but, I thought the fella did a good job that came in from Latvia. I mean, for being you could say he started off as a third stringer, but it's quite a lot to ask a team to. They beat Nashville, and Nashville had Saros, but I think the goaltending, I mean, when you look at Boston, Swayman did as good a job as you could expect. Bobrovsky's been in his zone now. Now it's going to be down to we know that Ottinger's he's had some games that you want to repeat, but he's played pretty well in the important games. And so I think it's no different than any other time that I can remember playoffs is you're not going to win without that goaltending, and sometimes you're not going to win even when you get it. But you got good teams back. I didn't know if Edmonton could protect the lead because they had some tough times, as you know, in the playoffs with trying to keep the lead. But they have. I was impressed last night with Draisaitl. I really was. I thought, for a big offensive player, he came through for them big time in the last period, especially.
Scotty, how much will matchups matter in the Dallas-Edmonton series, especially when you consider Tanev and Lindell and the potential of them having home ice and getting last change and playing them against McDavid?
Yeah, they look to me a lot like the Panthers. They have a full lineup. They play everybody. They have a lot of confidence in their players. When you look at the Panthers, they play a full bench. I mean, they don't even you look at some of the matchups and you wondered what are they doing, but they have a team, and that's what Dallas has is they can count on a lot of different players. I don't know how much scoring they're going to get from everybody, but Edmonton's very similar because they do have some hard workers on the bottom six, but they don't score a lot. And it's going to depend on we know that McDavid and Draisaitl and certainly Nugent Hopkins and the other one, Hyman. Well, I mean, they're down to 4 that score a lot, but then you got Bouchard to contend with too.
What a story, huh?
Yeah, it is.
Great. He's been great. Scotty, one thing I was looking at, we get these emails every day just updating stats throughout the playoffs from the NHL. And interestingly enough, they said last year to this point, when they finished entering the conference final, the road teams were 40 and 29. That's the best record a road team has had. And now this year, second best is this season at 38 and 31. What's your explanation for why road teams seem to be doing better in the playoffs?
Well, yeah, compared to other years, but our rinks are there's no, I remember in my days, Pierre would remember too. You went in Chicago or you went into Boston, and, I can tell some stories. I remember we'd go into Boston in May, and I don't know how it happened, but we would play a game, and the next day we'd go to practice, and the heat was on in the dressing room. There's no air conditioning either. So, a lot of the buildings didn't have air, not just Boston or Chicago. A lot of other buildings. So, I think buildings are a big difference now, and of course, it always has been. And when you get, I think, as the series goes along, at the beginning, it's not as like the families and friends that mean so much to the players. I would imagine now that you're in the conference finals, they mean well. They want to be part of it, and you want them to be part of it if you're with the team. But also, you're worrying about tickets. You're worrying about where they're going to stay. You're going to worry about there's a lot to worry about. I still think that's a factor, and as the series moves on, it's probably going to be more of a factor that. When you're on the road and you're together as a team, you're eating all your meals together. There's less distractions. I wouldn't say distractions is probably a bad word to use when you're talking with your family, but it's less to look after.
Yep.
Scotty, one of the things that you used to look after all the time, relationships with officials. You were really good at that. I saw it firsthand. Are you concerned at all about the roller coaster ride that the officiating's been on so far this playoff season?
Well, Pierre, things have changed so much, Jim, that I think as an official, there's pressure still now as there was before, but with all the reviews and the way that they in the last, I don't even know all the rules, like the last minute or goals and all those, like. Even on the offsides, like, they've got the video coaches now that know what they're doing, but I don't know if the referees are as concerned sometimes about because there's a lot going on. It's a lot faster. There are 2 referees. They have to skate backwards a lot, and they don't want to miss much. And with 2 referees, you're going to miss less than if you have 1 referee. But the rules have changed so much now. Look at the amount of stick penalties that teams get at crucial times. I'm wondering even now if some of them are real penalties. Because all of a sudden, well, I'm not picking on him, but the guy that did it very well initially was Timo Solani. He was the first that did it. It worked. Anything that works. I'm not criticizing anything that works. If you can get away with it, but I think it's with the referees. It's a dicey slope. I think the rule that the league has when you're coaching, you don't like it, but I think it's probably a good protection for the coach that he can't really say very much after the game about the officiating. I think that's probably the way you want, because you could criticize every call, really. The only thing I always felt with the calls is the calls that are not penalties, to me, are more crucial. There are referees that are going to miss a call. They're going to miss a play in the corner. Probably not even a scoring chance because everything's changed now. But there's some calls. Well, they call them phantom calls. They're the ones that could really hurt because they're not really a penalty. And I think that the good referees now that are going to be in the next couple of series and the final, they're the best you can get. I mean, I agree. The referees, for the most part, they and they're getting criticized so much because they only have a split second to make the call.
Yeah.
And they don't have I think the cameras and the video and all that. But I don't think from a referee standpoint, they worry as much about that now because they know that justice is probably going to prevail somehow.
Yeah.
Scotty, look, Pierre, you can maybe explain your idea because I think it's great what you think they should do. And it's ironic, I think that I feel like we had more problems once we went to 2 refs on the ice, almost like too many chefs in the kitchen. So to speak.
Yeah, and then you got 2 linesmen.
And Pierre, I want you to you probably run it behind before, but just for our listeners and viewers, your idea of what maybe we could do.
You know what? I'd prefer to hear Scotty first and what he thinks, and then I'll come in after because Scotty's been really strong on the official. He's got a really good ideology on it.
Awesome.
Well, I mean, there's so much going on now that I don't think that one referee could keep up the pace. It's such a faster game. I don't know where he would go. I mean, he'd have to make calls from one end of the rink to the other. Guys, there's not as I think the hardest part for referees now, when I compare the games now that were like 20, 30, 40 years ago, is players stayed in their position. I mean, you could see who a right winger was, a left winger was. I mean, even coaches back in those days in training camp would divide the rink into 3, and they put lines down the rink. I mean, I know coaches that did that and say, you're a left winger, you're staying on your side. And, of course, that all changed with the European players coming over and going up high and changing lanes. So now you get a cluster of players. Sometimes you see the puck and you see 6 players, and in front of the net you could see up to 8 players. And I mean, to try to make a call and get through all that, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So here's my idea, Scotty. Rather than have 4 officials on the ice, you have 3 officials, 1 referee, 2 linesmen, and you have a 4th guy upstairs in the box with all the video monitors. He's in instantaneous communication with the guy on the ice, and he's saying, hey, Bowman's behind the play hooking guys all the time. Or Murphy's in front of the net cross-checking guys in the head. I think it would create more room on the ice, and the players would know there's an eye in the sky. I don't know if it works, but I know one thing. They can referee soccer 100-yard field by 80 yards wide, I think it is, and they have no problem having 1 referee do all the calls.
Yep.
Well, and then the referee, in that case, too, the referee's not worrying about where he should be positioning himself. I mean, it's a pretty rough game, and we see some pretty tough collisions that, the fellow that mentioned that, I'm going to say it's at least 20 years ago, but he had a different idea, Pierre. Ken Hitchcock wanted to have a referee on a chair or something going up and down, but it wouldn't work for television. I mean, you'd be in the way of the cameras. Yep. But it had the same idea as you. Yep. That when you're not on the ice and nobody can get near you, you see everything. Because that's what you're right. If we watch a game now, and whether we're watching television or at the game, we can watch everything and we can see it. And I think a lot of times, maybe that's what I'm getting at is some referees would guess because they didn't see it. And I mean, it's not a good excuse. I mean, obviously, I think the good referees will tell you that if I don't see it, I'm not calling it. And right. Pierre, we just lost a real good friend of ours recently, Wally Harris. Yep. And that's one thing that made Wally Harris a referee that he was, is he never guessed on plays. He didn't call a lot of penalties a lot of times, and then sometimes you're a coach and you have a good skilled team, and you don't want those penalties. I mean, you want to get power plays, but I think that's what I think is that it's probably it clutters up the ice with all those people. You got 4 officials. I'm amazed, honestly. I watch referees when I was at games, and I'm amazed how they can stay out of the way. I mean, not every time, but they're pretty adept at. They got to know how the game is played. They got to know the teams. It's an awful lot. I mean, I guess we can't give them all the credit in the world, but they deserve so much. You know.
Yeah, I agree. It's
Well
a thankless job.
well said.
Thankless job for sure.
Yep.
Scotty, you, as a coach, when you get to this point in the playoffs and there's 4 teams left and you've done a good job getting here, obviously, how do you balance making adjustments but also maintaining what got you to this point?
Well, I think the good teams and they know. I always wanted to know as much about. I mean, I know my own team, but I really want to know more about the other team too. I really believe that you worry about your own team all the time, but at the same time, if there's some nuances about players on the other team, and you can figure out what really counts. I think that's important, that the players that can really hurt you in games with their extra, the way they play. I thought a big thing in the playoffs. I don't know what they do now. I imagine they still do the same, but I liked the playoffs when I was coaching. The supervisor to me was a really key guy, and you could usually what happened is supervisor would come in before a series would start, usually met with the coach and the manager, and he would sit down and openly say, I might say, look, how much are you going to allow Pierre or Jimmy to these scrum? What are they going to do with the scrums? Are there going to be any? I mean, what should we do? Should we have to retaliate, or So you kind of lay the groundwork, and I thought they were important people. Now after the first game, after the series starts, they don't come to the coach anymore, which I think is good. They go to the manager. They go to the manager, and the coach can talk to the manager and say, here's what I thought the last game. Well, this guy's running around, or this guy's, he's doing all kinds of stuff with our goaltender, whatever it is. And the manager then talks to the coach. That's why it's important to have that dialogue, and you can, the referees want to get it right. So that was always a key thing, is that you go to the supervisor, and you're not just complaining about 10 things, but the things that are real crucial, you want to say to that. I mean, I really liked some of the ex-referees. I liked John McCauley. I might forget guys, but Bill McCreary, Dave Newell was a really. I mean, you can tell the good supervisors. They weren't just trying to slosh you off. They come and they weren't afraid of you. They come to you in the morning, and they go to the manager a lot. And I had known a lot of the referees. I didn't spend much time talking to them when the series were on, but I mean, you could correspond with your manager, and I think that's crucial, that what kind of a game, because in my day there was referees that it's not like it is today. They don't keep all the stats. Like if they're a referee today, they know exactly how many penalties you call on home team, away team. I mean, I don't know if the referees are concerned or not, but I mean, it may be an overflow of statistics. I don't know if that's good or bad as a referee, because I mean, let's face it, they're all there to do the job they can. Be honest about it, and don't take any. There was some referees that weren't as communicative as others. Well, then you got to get used to them.
Good point.
Nobody has more information about the National Hockey League, Jimmy, than Scotty Bowman. So, Scotty, what's your intel for the New York Rangers in terms of how they need to play against the Florida Panthers?
Well, they're going to have to play as brave as they can. Skilled player. They got skill on this team. I mean, they have to make sure they're key guys. I mean, Kreider, Panarin, now Lafreniere. These guys are really skilled players, and I got to say that Paul Maurice is an experienced coach, and he's got a team that they play on the edge. They do that, and they kill penalties pretty well for the most part. But they're gonna be tough to play against, and I think if the Rangers, I mean, they're gonna have to make sure that they stand up against this team, because and not all the players, but some of them, that you got to make sure that they're not taking advantage of your skill. But the Rangers don't have a lot of size problem. The ones I mentioned are pretty good sized players, but they still can't. They got to get it. They got to get on their game, and I think that's what I would say is they got to make sure that they have enough. You don't want players fooling around with Fox, who's a key guy. I guess he has had some injuries, but you got some. You don't have to worry about Trouba or Lindgren and those guys. They play a pretty tough game as it is, but they're gonna have to keep doing it.
Jimmy, let me grab Scotty here for one more. You just talked about it, Scotty, and I had the good fortune, the honor to stand next to you on a Stanley Cup winning team. I know how much you had belief in your players character-wise. Does a player like Matt Rempe have to figure in the outcome for the Rangers against Florida? Does he have to send a message early, or is that somebody you just keep on the sideline as a nuclear deterrent?
I think it's be much more. He's such a big guy. You got to keep him out of the limelight. We know at home, like he's a gallery god of the Madison Square Garden, and they want him to play, and they want to see him. I mean, that's the kind of fans he got there. So I would not want him to be the number one focal point. And it's hard if you don't play a player fairly regular. If you only play him 5-6 shifts a game, then the referees. He's a big, strong guy, and I mean, I think he's getting experience and knowing to pick his spots. But I don't think in the playoffs, so especially we're in the finals of the conference, I don't think those players now are going to get out of hand. It's too risky. You can't go in and try to pick a fight. If you do, you're going to get a differential. You could cost a game. I mean, every game is you lose the first game in the series, you gotta be pretty good to come back. I mean, you gotta be a good team to do it, and they all do it. The good teams can do that. But I say Rempe, I mean, probably try to hide him, but don't just make him go out there and try to do something that could get the attention of the referee too.
Scotty, I got one more final one here. Just your thoughts, and Pierre and I were kind of raving about him a couple of days ago. On Pete DeBoer. He's been a few stops now, but wherever he goes, they seem to win. His players seem to buy into him. Just your thoughts on the type of coach he's become over the years.
He's got a lot of experience. He had a good record in junior. It's strange. He's moved from about 4 teams now already, and he's very structured, which has helped a team like Dallas. You can see now they play a certain way. Like I knew when he was in Vegas, and I'm not sure who was playing them, but they had a goalie coach that I knew, Dave Pryor, and he worked with Pete DeBoer. He didn't stay there very long there, but he had a lot of good strategic. I used to talk to Dave about it. One of them is this: if you're a defenseman. I'm trying to see if I don't see it as much now because they move a little more. If you're a defenseman and you see a player has the puck below your goal line, if you can see his crest on his jersey, you don't go.
Okay.
You see his number, you take right off and you go. Just little nuances. So I think he's done a really good job in developing a lot of the young players. The older players, well, they've been there a while. And, a great pickup for them, to me, has been a guy like Chris Tanev. Yeah. He's solidified a good, I mean, they've done a good job in Dallas. Jimmy Nell, he was very instrumental in Detroit because he was they had a scout named Joe McDonnell that was a good scout in Ontario, mostly in Ontario, but he might be doing more now. I think he's the one that might have been influential. I don't know this for sure, but that Johnson kid that nobody could see play, and he was an unknown 23rd pick in the draft, but he didn't play for anybody after they had the COVID. He didn't go to Europe. Junior wasn't playing, but I think Peter utilizes. He gives players a lot of confidence. I don't think he gets down on one or two, and he's a guy that'll play them again. But I mean, when you move around and you coach different types of players, and he did well in junior. He's got a guy with him, Jim. Is it Spot? Is it Spot?
Steven Spot.
Yeah, Steven.
I got to know him because there was a boy in Buffalo that he was trying to recruit. I like him a lot. I think like I've always felt the most important people on your team. The coach has got the media. He's got a lot of stuff to do. But when you have help on the bench, like even in Edmonton now, they made the coaching change. It was really tough on Jay Woodcroft, but and Pierre will know this because it seemed to have made a difference. But it was a surprise for a lot of people. They brought in Paul Coffey to go on the defense, same time as they made the coaching change, and they brought in Paul to work with the defense. And one thing he didn't want them to do, he wasn't interested in them just clearing pucks all the time. Like certain defensemen have to do it. You don't want them making mistakes. But I think he's done a very good job, Paul, with Bouchard. He's given him confidence. He makes the first pass. He's not the greatest defender, but he makes the first pass, and he gets his shot on the net.
Yep.
He's got a great shot. He doesn't have to slap it all the time. So, a guy like Paul Coffey he was a different type of defenseman. Pierre knows when we had him in he was an offensive defenseman. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't know defense. I mean, he probably knows a lot more about it because he's a great offensive player, but he wants them to make plays with the puck. He doesn't want them to just clear it all the time. And I think that's an important part of the staff, getting coaches on your team that can help you. And they got some good coaches in this league that are not head coaches, maybe because they're not as disciplined as some as others. They don't want the discipline part, but they do want the strategic part.
Great point.
All right. Do you need a caddy over Transit Valley? Do you need me to come out there and carry your bag? Are you ready to go play 18?
No, Pierre. I wouldn't play 18 much more now. I can't do everything. I mean, I watch these late games. I got to sleep too. But no, I think it's the time of the series. That I think everybody's leaning on Dallas as a favorite because they got a pretty well balanced team, and they ran through some pretty good teams when you think about it. You go through Vegas.
Last two champs.
Yeah, so they look pretty good to me, but I'm looking. I don't know as much about the West because the games are always later, but I'm really looking forward to this Ranger Panthers series.
I like 7 games.
Yeah, I mean it's it could offer. I mean, Rangers got the pedigree. They got both teams have goaltending. They're coming up. I think both those goalies, like Bobrovsky, did a great job. I mean, he was up against Swayman, and Swayman was terrific. I mean, there's no taking away from what he did, but I think that Florida just had a little bit more punch. They had a little bit when they, even like now they got Barkov won the Selke, which was well deserved, but boy, they've put together a team of guys that. I mean, I don't even remember some of these guys. Stanlin, they got him. He was with Columbus. He's been a fourth-line player. Forsling, they got him from Vancouver for nothing. Chicago, he was a bit young. Just an example, they put him into the lineup when he was 20 or 21. You could see he was going to be pretty good, but he wasn't that good. He was young, a young defenseman. But they've recycled a lot of. Like Bennett was a decent player in Calgary, but he's so much more valuable on this team. And but Rangers, I mean, I think I don't know him that well, but Peter Laviolette's been around the horn a long time. I give him a lot of credit this year because he came in and they lost a tough series last year, and they were kind of wide open. He put in that 1-3-1. They were a pretty stingy team, and I think when guys have a system now, you don't, Shesterkin's been good, but he hasn't been bombarded all the time, and that's the credit to Peter Laviolette. I mean, he's got two guys I know. He's got Phil Housley, who's an offensive defenseman, and he's got Dan Muse, who was with the development team, and he's also got Mike Pekka. He was a great face-off guy, Pekka.
Yep.
I don't know who's working with Trocheck, and he's really developed. I mean, you know, I that's the part of hockey I watched last night, and I said, how can the guy from Vancouver, JT Miller, I mean, he's 14-2 in the face-off, and I'm saying, please, the next time I got to be telling my center, look, jump on the puck, do something. Don't keep losing him, because you know the face-off. Trocheck has been a real find for the Rangers. I mean, he got important face-offs, and I don't know as much about the other ones, but face-offs can make so much difference, you know, in the series. And anyways, that's what I think. I think they're going to have a great playoff.
Yep, looking forward to it.
You're the best guest. You're the best coach in the history of sports. You're the best guest, and you're the best age group I've ever met.
A lot of fun talking to you guys.
You're the best.
Appreciate it, Scotty. We love it. It's our honor.
Yeah, we'll see you soon, huh?
All right.
This weekend. Thank you, Scott.
Bye. All right, Scotty. Bye. Scotty Bowman joining us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network, and
come on,
and we could go all day with that. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Thank you.
It's just what he's
an amazing man.
The connection he still has to the game, Pierre. You know, it's just and some of the hello, some of the philosophies too, though.
Well,
that you know he had and still stand the test of time. And we're talking about these coaches, what systems they use, how they do this. I'm like,
mentorship matters, my man. Mentorship matters.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to learn from older people that have actually walked in your shoes before you even learned how to tie your shoes.
It's true.
He is an amazing man. I'm telling you, like, I cherish every time the phone rings and it's him. We talk and like, I don't really talk. I listen.
Exactly.
But, so, you know, we've talked a lot about the influence of Phil Housley. We've talked a lot about the influence of Paul Coffey on what he's done. But how many guys would know Dan Muse?
I know.
How many guys would know Michael Pekka?
Yep.
You got to be in
Spot.
Steven Spot. You got to be in deep to know that.
Yep.
I'm telling you right now, half the stuff he knows he doesn't even want to say because he doesn't want to sound cocky. He's such a brilliant person. He could have been anything. He could have been a lawyer, a doctor, a hedge fund operator. He's a brilliant mathematics person, but he cares so much about the game. He just loves the game.
He's amazing. He's amazing. I mean, even when I was asking him, Pierre, about the road records, and he went we went right to it, and we were discussing that in the last round with the Bruins a couple times, doing the hotel, and how teams don't do that as much anymore. Maybe they do. Maybe they need to start doing it again.
We would go on scouting trips and play golf. Sometimes he'd say, "Hey, grab my bag." So I keep grabbing my bag. That's right. I took you inside baseball a little bit, saying, "You need me to come out there to Transit Valley to carry your bag?" Well, I don't play 18 anymore. You want to bet? I bet he does play 18.
It's good too. He's back up in Buffalo. Does he go back there for the summers, Pierre?
Yeah, he spends the summer there. He's so proud of the Buffalo area. He loves the people there. Loves the entire area. He's got a beautiful home there, right on the back of I think it's a 6th hole. I could be wrong, but it's right around there at the golf course. And it's just, he loves that neighborhood. He loves the town.
Yeah. I saw one of our commenters, we'll grab it in a little when we get to that, but he was saying, I really wish Scotty had won a cup with the Sabres. We loved him here.
So I'll say this. He really wanted to. Like, I can tell you right now.
Tell it, the place is dear to his heart.
St. Louis really mattered to him. And they went to the final 3 straight years and they didn't win. But that was setting him up for what was his dream job, I think, was obviously Montreal.
Yep.
And then, the success he had in the 70s there. And then he leaves and, after they win the cup in 79 and goes to Buffalo. And it was up and down. It was herky-jerky. But look at some of the players that he drafted that ended up being in the Hall of Fame.
I know.
Housley, Andreychuk, Barrasso. He had some help. There were a lot of good scouts there. Rudy Miguet was there, the late Rudy Miguet, the late Jack Bowman, his brother. I go to – there's so many that, that I knew that were scouting there when he was there. But no, I mean – Buffalo, he really cares about the community. I'm just telling you, he really does.
Stuff. Well, for anyone thinking of moving to that wonderful community, I want to urge you to go to our wonderful sponsors, TCS Customs and Logistics. Unlock the full potential of your shipping operation with TCS Customs and Logistics. From around the corner to around the world, flatbeds to air freight, customs clearance, drawback consulting. TCS is a one-stop shop for all things transport, moving pieces and delivering a peace of mind. For no obligation customs or freight quote, contact sickpodcast@shiptcs.com. Again, that is sickpodcast@shiptcs.com. Pierre, everyone's psyched about Scotty being there.
Before you go, one more thing. I talked about those scouts that helped Scotty, and I was remiss on one, and I just thought about it. Tommy Barrasso came out of Boxborough High School, and the guy that kept pushing Scotty to draft him, the late Bucky Kane.
Okay.
And so where Scotty lives down in Florida, I won't tell you the community, but where he lives there, Bucky Kane's the guy that kind of pushed him to go there. Now, he's not with us anymore, but it was Bucky Kane. And Scotty tells me all the time, it was Bucky that kept pushing him. Go get Barrasso. You got to go see Barrasso. And, Tommy played in the NHL as an 18-year-old, as a goalie.
Yeah, came right out of high school. Yeah.
How many guys do that?
No, not many. Not many anymore. And to go from high school to Pierre, because now you see a lot of these kids are coming out of these junior programs or developmental programs rather than just high school hockey. So that's pretty amazing what he did.
No, it really was. And then obviously the payoff was we got to coach Tommy in the 92, 91 and 92, but 92 in particular. I'll leave you with this is a good story. Tommy, he'll laugh his butt off. I know Kevin Stevens watches a lot. I was just going to say, Pierre, before you go on, just as you're saying that, Kevin's texting me right now. He said, I could listen to Scotty all day. That was awesome. So Kevin will like this story. Right now. We're at the Drake Hotel. It's the morning of Game 4. We're up 3-0, and we're having a team breakfast. There's no morning skate. It's an optional. I don't think any guys want to go because we're worn out. We're tired. Game 3 was 1-0. And you remember how Scotty was talking about the old buildings and how rough they were? Mm-hmm. Old Chicago Stadium was one of them. It was rough. It was dark. It was nasty. It was mean. It was just a rough place to play. So anyways, long story short, there's a black car, a black Bentley in front of the hotel, the Drake Hotel in Chicago, and it's like empty. So Scotty goes, which one of the guys has a Bentley? And Tommy Barrasso goes, I do. I just bought it. And everybody in the room's like looking around, like, what the heck? Oh, yeah. Kevin would have been in the room. He knows what I'm talking about.
He knows.
That was pretty funny. But
what was Kevin driving back in the day? Pierre,
they all had deals. They had deals with this one car dealer in Pittsburgh. He was actually a gentleman. He bought a lot of season tickets, and a lot of the guys
smart move
bought cars from her, did commercials on trade, and got cars. So I don't remember what Kev was driving back in the day.
I remember the Bruins used to do that with a place up in Linfield, Massachusetts as well. All the 80s Bruins, 70s Bruins. So
tell Kevin we're waiting for him to make an appearance.
Well, he's listening right now.
We're waiting for you.
The invite's always open, Kev. Love to have you on. And Scotty just texting us too. He said, great talking with you guys. All right, so let's get over to our questions right now because we've got a lot lined up. Everybody's so excited, obviously, to watch and hear the great Scotty Bowman. What do we got first, guys? Alex Evanowski, what team would you say is the most near and dear to Scotty's heart? I would say it comes down to 2, Montreal and Detroit. I'd have to agree, but I don't know, Pierre. What about the team that you won with him on?
No, that team was special, but he always, and I say this with the respect to the Johnson family, Scotty always said, this is Bob Johnson's team. I'm just a caretaker.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's the kind of man Scotty is and was then. And I was his roommate. I can tell you, he used to say, I'm coaching this team, but this is Bob's team. And Scotty would tell you, Scotty didn't do the practices. He just coached the games. I ran the practices.
Yep.
And that's just how it worked. It was Bob's team, and we all knew that. And we always adhered to Bob's philosophy on a lot of things. But when it come to running the team during a game, it was Scotty's team.
Look, you were there.
If you were asking me, there are two teams that I think matter to Scotty a lot personally. One was the Montreal team that beat Philadelphia to win the Stanley Cup because it was really the end of the Philadelphia Broad Street Bullies.
Okay.
That ended that whole thing. So Scotty, I think, was really proud of that team in particular. He talked about it a lot to me. And I'd say the 0-2 Detroit team,
when he went out for the final lap,
they had to beat Colorado and all the stuff going on with Colorado in that time. And this is a great story. I mean, I'm sure he's still watching. He calls me up. I'm doing the games on TSN with Gord Miller and Bob McKenzie. And he calls me up. I'm at the hotel in Detroit. And he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I just got off the radio." He says, "Good. Meet me in the lobby. I'll be right there." So I walk out. I meet him in the lobby. And he says, "Okay, at least you're dressed all right." So, okay. So I get in the car, and he says, I said, "Where are we going?" He goes, "We're going for a dinner. We're going to have a dinner." So I said, "Okay." So we start driving. I know Detroit pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's taking me. I go, "Scotty, where the heck are we going? Like, come on, tell me where we're going." He says, No, you'll see. We drove to Grosse Pointe. We went to the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. We pull in. This gentleman with a big hat, they call him the Commodore.
Yeah.
The Commodore comes down. He says, "Mr. Bowman, Mr. McGuire, please follow me." So Scotty had it all set up. We go upstairs to a private dining room at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
We'd never been in a yacht club before that, and I'd never been in one since.
Yeah.
I was blown away. So the whole dinner was about Scotty talking to me and passing on information from his career, from his life, about his parents, about his brother, about his sister, about his two brothers, actually, about all his hockey stuff. It was like a 3-hour dinner.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. So then at the end, he says, "I'm going to tell you something you can't tell anybody." And I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
He says, "You cannot tell anybody. You promise?" I said, "I promise." I said, "Okay." He goes, "Tomorrow's my last game. We're going to win tomorrow. We're going to win the cup tomorrow. Tomorrow's my last game. And when we win, I'm going to put on skates just like the players do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to skate around with the cup." He says, "Pierre, you're the only person that knows. You cannot tell anybody." I said, "I'm not going to tell anybody. I promise." Do you know how hard it was not to tell anybody?
I can imagine.
I'm sitting there. The next day we're at practice, the morning skating. Gord's there, Bob's there. All these media people are there.
Yeah.
I know that. And I couldn't say a word to anybody. It was killing.
That's twice you've been in that situation, right? Mark Recchi as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Pretty amazing. Yeah, I remember that. I remember you telling me that story about that. That's crazy. And were you with TSN then at that time? Okay.
NBC didn't have the rights yet. It was 2002. They were trying to get them, but they didn't have them yet. So.
Now, were you down on the bench after the game, like when all this?
What we did, we just did live. We did shows, like shows from the. So pre, post, day of, like all that stuff. It was just going back to Canada on TSN.
So I can imagine you're sitting there looking down, trying to see when everything's going down after they win the cup, if he's getting the skates on, right?
No, then I saw him out there with the skates, and I was
yeah, that was out.
So a good part of this too is Bob and Gord, who are like trusted friends and allies like you are, and people that I've worked with for so long. Scotty says, "Bring the boys down." So we go down in the coach's office in the dressing room. When you win the Stanley Cup, when you're working in the media anyways, you don't go down in the room and hang out. And we got invited by the head coach of the team, who had just coached his last game, and we're hanging out there. And it was, I've been fortunate to be around the ceremony as a participant twice, but broadcasting, you just leave. It's their moment, not yours. To be there that night for his last game, I'll never forget it. And old Joe Louis Arena, I'll never forget it. Never, ever, ever forget that.
Great stuff. I look forward to that book someday, Pierre. All right, next question. Evan McLaren. Since Kevin is watching, let him know that he was hockey to me when I was a kid. 54 goals, 69 assists, 123 points, and 250 PIMs in one season. I don't care who your line mates are. That's pure hockey. And yeah, he was. You got to coach him. Yeah, I saw him as a player, but
Evan's statement is so strong. I'm getting emotional here because I know how hard Kevin had to work. Mm-hmm. Kevin would be the first person to tell you when he was at Boston College, like he wasn't a star player there.
Yeah,
he was a depth player there. He had to really work. And what I think he got. So he got traded from Los Angeles. He was originally drafted by LA.
Yep.
He got traded for a guy, I think, named Anders Håkansson. You'd have to look it up, but I think that's pretty close to it, Anders Håkansson. And I think what got Kevin going They signed a guy out of BU by the name of Johnny Cullen, and they drafted a guy in the 4th round by the name of Mark Recchi, and those guys all became fast friends, and the option line was born, and I think that just set Kevin going and passed a lot of pucks to Kevin back in the day, and his hands got better.
Yeah.
His hands are always good.
The ultimate power forward, and of course, you've told us many times in a speech he gave
Oh,
to help you guys out against the Bruins.
Troy Mullen and Kevin Stevens, boy, I'll tell you, 1991 Eastern Conference Final. Who was the guy that got traded for him? Was it Hawkinson?
It was. Good call. You nailed it. All right, next question. Randy Workman. With this Tampa trade, is it safe to say that Stamkos is on his way out of Tampa?
No.
I don't think so, Randy.
No, Randy.
No.
I understand the premise, though, Jimmy.
Yes.
But I don't think it's safe to say anything about that. You know, I can't say too much because I will never break a confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say safe to say, no, I would not.
No.
Talk to people internally that I'd say, no, that's not safe to say.
And I believe Brisebois said that ongoing talks right now, and he was feeling good about it. So we'll see what happens.
Jimmy, there's certain
fine. Yeah.
There's certain.
Well, I'm just letting Randy know, just so he knows. Yep. So we'll see. Hey, by the way, though, that brings some good street cred and leadership back into that dressing room for your young guys. I like Ryan McDonough back.
So here's the thing: 35, 2 years left on his deal, fixed costs. You know what you're paying. You know where you're in the cap. So look at the lefty there now: Victor Hedman, Sergachev, and McDonough. So now McDonough's minutes can come down around where Suter's are in Dallas. And if McDonough's playing Suter-type minutes, that's good. So no power play time, elite penalty killing time, and not as much matchup time. That's really good. Right. It's one of the bigger mistakes Montreal made. And Gainey's Bob Gainey's a really good hockey man. That was the people that recommended that should never work in hockey again. That trade. They never should. Yeah. To say that Ryan McDonough didn't have character, and that's what they were saying internally, so flawed.
Yeah.
That's just the worst intel ever.
Because that's pretty much his trademark. I mean, when you talk about Ryan McDonough, that's one of the first topics that comes up. You know,
do you know what happened last week at Madison, Wisconsin?
No.
Ryan McDonough got his diploma from the University of Wisconsin. Okay. In 13 or 14 years after he was there. Think that's great. Not character?
Yep. Speaking of, I know he's listened a couple times. AJ Greer, former BU player. Yeah, he got his degree at BU this past weekend, so I saw him tweeting that out. It was pretty cool.
Way to go, AJ. Congratulations.
And congratulations to all the graduates out there. It's that time of year. So
way to go, AJ. That's
out there. Yep. All right, next question. Samuel Mattei. Hey, Jimmy and Pierre, hey, Sam, do you think there's a science behind power forwards, grinders, and enforcers becoming such great coaches? Has to be from the way they naturally see the ice and the defensive side of it. That's a great observation, Sam.
I'm going to let you do you have any more to add to that?
No, I mean, I've noticed it too, Pierre. I think what he's saying there is that they haven't instilled in them to think a 200-foot game. And also, a lot of them had to work really hard to get to where they were. It wasn't like they were a high draft pick or an all-star. So this, in my opinion, I think that work ethic that's just been instilled them from day one, probably from their parents, you know, like that's perfect for coaching. That's what you need.
The two best players I've ever seen become successful coaches, Jacques Lemaire, who's a Hockey Hall of Famer, and Larry Robinson, who's a Hockey Hall of Famer. They were the two best players, in my humble opinion, that I ever saw, and I coached against both of them.
Yeah,
I ever saw a coach. And Jacques was way beyond his years. He was way ahead of it. And Larry was his trusted sidekick and assistant. And who did they learn from? Who did they play for? William Scott Bowman.
Yes.
It all goes. It all works.
It's all a cycle.
But I would that last question, I think those players that he's alluding to, the bumpers and the grinders and the workers, they have to see the game a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you ask Wayne Gretzky, hey, Wayne, how'd you do that? Or he'd look at you and say, I don't know. I just did it.
Right.
I just did it.
Yep. But if you ask a Craig Berube.
You ask Rick Tocchet. You ask Rick Tocchet. hey, you played with a broken jaw in the 1992 playoffs. How'd you do it? He'll tell you how he did it.
Yeah. No.
And you know the first thing he'd say to you? You got a lot of help from the trainers and the doctors. No, that's what so they appreciate everybody in the process.
Right. Which is what you need to have is an appreciation when you become the coach. Yeah.
So that, to the questioner's point, it's a great question. Really good question.
Good points on Robinson too and Lemaire. All right, next question. Alex Semanowski, what separates Edmonton and Colorado that could give them more of a chance against Dallas? They feel so similar. You think Edmonton can get to the dirty areas to score easier than Colorado did? I would just say quickly, Pierre, and Scotty alluded to it as well, and you have already on numerous occasions throughout this playoff. Their bottom six in Edmonton needs to find a way to become a scoring threat. I don't know how they do it. When they have to do it, because the deeper you get in the playoffs, you know how honed in the other team's going to be on the guys like McDavid and Draisaitl. I know Draisaitl is on another level right now. He's my Conn Smythe if it ended today, to be honest. But they need those guys to step up here. That's the bottom line.
Here's what separates Colorado from Dallas, just so people know, playing against Edmonton. Matchup capability of Tanev and Lindell.
Yep.
That matchup capability is crazy because when Scotty talked about you got to have help on the bench.
Yeah.
So when we coached, Scotty ran the forwards and he ran the bench, but I had a certain responsibility running the defense and the matchups in the back end. And if you don't have the right guys to match up against star players, you're not going to win.
That's it.
We had one weapon that was amazing, and that was Alfie Samuelson. Yeah. And so we could play Larry Murphy deeper behind Alfie so that he wouldn't be getting the pile drive because he was so important to our offense. Right. And we had a guy back then, the rules were different, Gordy Roberts, who Scotty got out of Peoria with Craig Patrick off the waiver wire. It was unbelievable. Gordy knew how to play. Gordy would hold up and get in people's way to give Murph room. So the matchups were always calculated, and they were an important part of it. So in Dallas, they got those two guys in the back end, and Lindell and Tanev. Boy, oh boy, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. And Alan Nasruddin runs a defense there. And he does a really good job. He does a really, really good job with it in Dallas. Really good.
I mean, if you're looking at it, Pierre, as I was thinking about this when we were talking to Scotty, if you were going to say who are the two deepest teams left, I would say Florida and Dallas. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. Next question. Veka Delmas. Hello. Have been listening to your show for a few months, and I really love it. Well, thank you. You are so educational and positive. Have you seen enough from Seelovs to say that he will be a number one goalkeeper in the NHL? I don't know number one yet, but funny, Pierre brought this up today. So he's the backup next year.
Oh yeah, no. I'm a big Casey. If Casey were watching, he knows. Yeah. I love Casey a lot. I've known Casey since he was a young kid going to prep school before he went to University of New Hampshire. He's done a great job, but I think Sheelovs has gone past him. Yep. And that doesn't mean that he's going to pass Thatcher Demko, but you need Allmark and Swayman proved it in Boston. To run the regular season gauntlet, especially in the West, because you've heard how hard the travel is. If you have those two guys, Seeloff and Thatcher Demko, you're in good position if you're Rick Hockey. So I don't know what this means for Casey DeSmith. I just don't know.
Well, whatever it means,
he's going to land somewhere.
He's going to land somewhere because he's valuable. He proved it.
If you're not back in Vancouver, but if he's not back in Vancouver, he's going to land somewhere. He's going to be playing somewhere.
Yep. All right. Next question. Gaming House. Question. Jimmy, Pierre, I love the podcast. Thank you. Should the Bruins lose DeBrus to free agency as speculated? Would Anthony Duclair be a good replacement? Always liked his game. Could be. I mean, I like him. Been up and down. He's been on a deep run last year with Florida. I think that experience helped him a lot. So, yeah, I think that's a fair observation.
You know, sometimes too, like Anthony went to San Jose this year before he moved down to Tampa. He's moved around a fair bit.
Yep.
One of the things I like, I was there in Columbus the day that he got let go by Columbus. John Tortorella whacked him around, but good. Verbally. He did. John, you can't, the tape's out there. You can't debate it. And one of the things John said is he won't listen. He needs to listen. It's frustrating, John, because he wouldn't listen. And I think he learned from that because he did listen in Ottawa.
Yep.
And he listened in San Jose. And I think he listened in Tampa because you could see Yeah, it's starting to come. So, you know, I think he might have learned something from John, and so I wouldn't be afraid to take him. I think earlier in his career, I'd have been worried about it.
And you know what? There's nothing like a good comeback story, Pierre. And this is a kid who was very highly touted coming out, a lot of expectations. And like you said, for whatever reason, maybe not listening, whatever, he wasn't living up to those expectations. And he's taken a beating from the media and the fans, you know, and I think he seems to now be maturing and coming into his own, and it's not too late. So I think, you know, if he seems to be handling it right, if he continues to do so, he learned some valuable lessons that have made him a better player and probably a better teammate as well.
One of the best lines I ever saw at the World Junior for Canada was Reichel.
Yep.
Oh, no, sorry. Wrong person. Reinhardt, not Reichel.
Oh, Reinhardt. I was like, Robert Reichel.
Not Robert Reichel. Reinhardt.
Yep.
Duclair. And you know who the third guy was?
No.
Think about it now. I'll tell you, Domi.
Yeah. Domi. Max Domi. Okay.
That was one of the best lines I've seen Canada have at a World Junior. And they were all phenomenal together. They were really, really good together. So it shows he can play with creative players too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think Reinhardt is just, you see what he did this year.
Yeah. He's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah. But that line, so it just, when I saw that, I was like, okay, Duclair can play with upper echelon players. He's not going to be intimidated by them.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's positive too when you're doing an evaluation on a player.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes. And I'm interested in the term he gets as well, Pierre. You know, I hope he just doesn't have to keep going on 1-year deals. I want to see him maybe secure 3 if he can. All right, next question. Enter tap. Jimmy and Pierre, do you believe that the McDonough trade was made to clear space for Nashville for big deals such as Marner for Saros? No idea. I do think Nashville is going to be a little more aggressive than maybe some people think. I think Barry Trotz wants to go out and really put his imprint on this team now. So I think they're going to be an interesting team to watch. I don't know anything about Marner or Saros right now, though.
They need scoring.
Yeah.
We talked about it. If they weren't getting offense from Forsberg, from O'Reilly, or from Gus Nyquist,
they don't have anything.
So they were too easy to play against matchup-wise. So they do need more scoring. They've got some young forwards filtering through their organization.
I was going to ask you. Okay.
Exciting. They do. They've got some young guys that are good players, going to be very high-end offensive players, but they need more. About what it does for Cap, I don't know. I think they're fine. If they want to make a deal, Barry will make a deal. He's got a lot of assets. He's got a lot of draft collateral.
Yep.
He's got a lot of draft collateral to move.
Yep. All right, next question. The puck bendings. Pierre, which player can you think of that got a bad rap for being disinterested? Well, it's kind of like we're just talking to Claire, but really was not.
I got one.
Okay.
Ryan O'Reilly.
Ooh, it's a great call. If you consider the beginning of his career.
Well, it wasn't so much in Colorado because the reason why that happened was Calgary made the big offer. It was in Buffalo.
Yeah, it was in Buffalo. Yeah, he did have a lot of troubles there.
Yeah,
and he cleaned it up.
Well, he did.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He's a worker. He's a proud guy. I'll never forget. He was a second-round pick. I'm never going to forget this. It shows you how smart Bob McKenzie is. I'm just telling you. Bobby Mack and I used to do the draft with Gordon Miller, and we did it for a lot of years. And we didn't just do the first round. Like, we knew every player. We were going, you know, back then there were 11 and 12 rounds. And then it's shutting down to 7. And Bobby Mack looked at Gordon and I and said, this guy will be in the NHL as an 18-year-old, as a second-round pick. And we're looking at him like, does he skate well enough? Are you sure about that? He was.
Yep.
Bobby nailed it. Bobby got it right on. And he knew Bobby knew the Ontario Hockey League players better than any scout, I think. He was so good at it. He really was.
Let's get Bobby on here sometime, Pierre. Love to have him.
We had Sean McKenzie on. He hit it out of the park.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sean was great. Saw him a couple times at the rink, too. He loved coming on. Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly, Pierre, I think that's a perfect example right there. And what a face-off man he's become over the years.
Well, he won the cup in 2019. I'll tell you one thing right now. St. Louis doesn't win without Ryan O'Reilly and Jordan Binnington. Tell you, they ain't talking about all the defensemen and everything else and Berube and everything else. Ask Berube. He'll tell you.
I agree.
He'll tell you.
Completely agree. All right, next question. Alex Ivanowski, I've never been one to blame my team's loss on how a game was officiated. In any sport, the fans and media that complain the most will never be happy no matter what you do. Am I wrong on this?
No,
Alex, I'm the same way. I try not to do it at all. The one thing, though, I find myself lately is not being able to ignore that there's an issue. There's something not right, in my opinion. But I'm not blaming any one ref or a set of officials for a loss on a team. The teams do that. The teams win and lose, not the officials.
The professionalism of the NHL officials has never been better.
Yeah,
you heard Scotty talk about it. It's a hard sport to officiate. I'm mind shattered, and I'm not trying to pick a fight with anybody, but I'm mind shattered by the opinions of some of the people that I'm reading. And I'm not talking about social media because Jimmy does all my social media. I don't do any social media.
No, talking pure articles, old school articles.
Columnists,
yes,
and day-to-day reporters that have actually now started cheering for teams. Red Fisher never did that.
No.
Never did that.
No.
Frank Gore never did that. Like, I'm talking about the great Bob McKenzie never did that.
Pierre,
I never did that. I'm talking about the best columnists that ever covered the game.
Yeah,
they never did that stuff.
So I'm not going to name names. But recently, a reporter was talking about a team to me that he or she covers and said, we. Like this person's part of the team.
Yeah.
Now, that used to bug the heck out of me when fans would say that, but I get it because the team belongs to a community, to a city. I can understand it for a fan, and they're not paid to be objective when they write. So I get that. But reporter out there, you are not part of the team. Your job is to cover them objectively, win or lose. That's it.
Jimmy, who's really good, and he's a Hall of Famer too, Kevin Paul DuPont.
Oh, he's great. We've had him on here.
I'm trying to go on my brain, like all the guys I used to read.
Yeah.
Elite. He was elite.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. So, anyways, not to sidetrack. All right, next question. Habinations. Is Trey Living a good GM? I think so. I like his vision. I'll give him that. Like, I like what he wants in his teams.
Here's what we're going to find out. Now he's got a chance to wipe the slate clean.
Yep.
He inherited his coach last year. He's got his own coach. He's got a chance to clean up his roster because now he's been the GM for a year.
Yep.
He should know organizational strengths and organizational weaknesses. He also should know contributors from the scouting department at the amateur level and the professional level. He should also know depth and infrastructure of the minor league system.
Yeah.
So now we're going to see. Do I think he's a good GM? I think yes, but now he's got to prove it. Yeah.
I remember him quickly, Pierre, just when he was the assistant GM in Arizona. And I had him on a show I was doing at the time, and he struck me as a guy that's pretty diligent. So I'm sure he's done all that stuff. Like, he seemed very diligent even at that young age. So
if you want to clean something up, you got to do that.
Yeah.
I learned that from our first guest, our only guest today. And so, I've been in a situation where I've tried to do that, and sometimes you get halfway to where you need to be.
Yeah.
Then the rug gets pulled off from underneath it because the owner sells or the owner passes away or what stuff happens. Stuff happens.
It happens. All right, next question. What do we got? Pierre, based on Montreal's needs, could you please give me in their respective order the top 5 offensive players you draft or a defenseman and trade?
No, I couldn't give you the top 5 because it'll fluctuate on everybody.
Yeah.
Montreal's organizational need is a scoring winger. And I would say a lot of that is if they get Kirby Dach back. And if they get Kirby Dach back, that changes their whole depth chart. And then potentially you can play Newhook as a 3 at center. And then you can play Evans as a 4. But what it would do is you'd still need to add more scoring on the wings and more size. I don't think you need to do much on the defense, especially getting Hudson there now. I think with Hudson being there, it makes a big difference because now Matheson's not going to have to play as many minutes on the power play.
Yep.
It's going to make a big difference.
I think, too, Pierre, one of the things, and I'm sure they've already done it or they're in the process of doing the final stages of it, too, is evaluating their whole defense as a whole at every level of the organization because they have so much depth at that position right now that they can use in a trade.
Yeah, no, that's what we're saying. So that they need I think it's not about numbers now with Montreal. It's about fine tuning and recognizing what's the one asset that we need to add that's going to make us a legitimate contender for the playoffs. Because one thing nobody wants to talk about, Jacob Fowler, because he's not going to be there next year. So it's convenient to forget him.
Right.
The goalie at Boston College, Jacob Fowler, is a superstar in the waiting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy to say that about a goalie, Jimmy.
No, I know.
But in this case, you know what I know and what people in the business know. This guy and Trey Augustine are probably the two best prospects outside the NHL.
Yeah, I would agree.
And look, I know all the other ones. I know Detroit.
Yeah.
I know all, Wallstead in Minnesota. Like I get it. There's other guys, and don't take it personal if we say we don't mention your team's goalie.
Mm-hmm.
But these two guys, Augustine at Michigan State and Fowler at BC, are home run hitting prospects for both their respective teams, Detroit and Montreal.
Yep. And you got that. You can build from that. All right. Next question. Vincent Uriel, no question today, gentlemen. I just want to say I was a kid growing up in Montreal. I remember seeing Scotty on skates with the cup. My dad had tears streaming down his cheeks. Thanks for sharing the memories, Pierre. Good stuff.
That was a special, that 48 hours. So going to the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club was pretty special, but being there in his office afterwards was pretty amazing.
That's great. All right, next question. Alex Iwanowski, I feel like Edmonton's power play can be even better if 97 would just shoot the puck more. He is getting great looks and is passing them up for Draisaitl one time when it's not there. Am I wrong?
Yeah, he can shoot it more, but Scotty Bowman made the best point of all. Evan Bouchard, he doesn't. And I should have brought it up to Scotty because we used to talk about this, the keep-in factor. How many defensemen can actually keep pucks alive in the offensive zone? Back in the day, Brian Leetch was good at it. Paul Coffey was good at it. Wade Redden was way underrated on it. Raymond Bourque was good at it. Larry Robinson when he was in Montreal and LA. So Evan Bouchard has that quality. He does. And when I watch him shoot the puck, he reminds me a little of Raymond.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I know it's different, but I see similar. Scotty could tell you, I used to do all these tapes, and Raymond had a different way about how he played. And so we would prepare differently and Kevin Stevens watching, he knows.
Yep.
We would have different philosophies of how to play against Raymond. Raymond didn't like it. I don't blame him. I wouldn't either. But so I would say that it's not just McDavid. They've got a lot of guys. Draisaitl is one-timer. Nugent Hopkins and the way he plays in the slot and bouncing out, and then obviously Bouchard. So it's more their power play is fine. They're fine.
Yeah. And Pierre, when we were listening to Scotty talk about Bouchard, I was just thinking of the Bruins Florida series that I just watched and what an advantage Florida had with their D-men able to get those shots in on Swayman, get a rebound, and then it's creating havoc and you're making Swayman move all over the place. The Bruins couldn't do that. A lot of teams can't do that. They don't have defensemen that can start that whole process from outside.
Montour, I keep telling you, it's good. Matt Cater's his agent. It's going to be a heck of a Christmas at the Cater house this year. I'll tell you that right now. It's going to be a heck of a, and he should send a Christmas card right now to Brandon Montour, Matt Cater.
He is going to be a pickup for somebody. All right, next question. Oh, I think we said we had 2 comments left, actually. No more questions, but we'll take the comments. Jason Logan says, loving the Eye Test podcast, guys. Growing up where hockey is not big, and now listen to you guys and your great guests. Yeah, Jason's from New Zealand, for those that don't know. So
you know what? I'll tell you, one of the best afternoons I had this winter during the hockey season was being at Hurley's and meeting Jason. His passion for the game.
Oh, he loves the game.
Screams energy.
Yeah.
It was awesome meeting him at Hurley's. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. We met. Jason and I became friends watching the World Juniors in 2009. Up in Montreal. All right, next comment.
From Ottawa.
Yep. We were in Montreal at a place called Mesa 14. It's no longer there. Great Mexican restaurant. All right. Final comment. Kook69. Of all the hockey paraphernalia I have over the years, the single most precious piece I have is a Scotty Bowman signed Montreal ball cap. There you go. Good stuff. Yeah, well, listen, obviously a pleasure every time we have him on here. Thanks, Scotty.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he is.
And he'll come on before the final, and he'll just tell you everything. We don't even have to. We'll just sit there.
We'll have him on before the Stanley Cup. But Pierre, just to be able, I know it's great for our listeners, but we're the same way. For Pierre and I to just sit here and learn from him and listen to him talk, we're like in your shoes. And it's such an honor to have him on the Eye Test, on the Sick Podcast Network, and just to get to know him even more through you, Pierre, has been great. So I appreciate it greatly. And thanks to our production crew in Montreal, as always. Thanks to you, the viewers, in the comment section and asking the questions. We love it. And Pierre, we will talk some New York Rangers and Florida Panthers, more specifically the Rangers, tomorrow when we welcome on Molly Walker of the New York Post here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Until then, get some sleep, buckle up. The conference finals are next. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by TCS Customs and Logistics. Moving pieces, delivering peace of mind.